Arteta! What a strike! What a screamer! Zola! And a fantastic goal! Arsenal back in it! And here's Limpar, lines it up, finds the net. Arsenal in front.
Arsenal put in brilliant performance at home to Napoli, but fall just 5 goals shy of the needed margin to feel comfortable on the road. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter at Yankee Gunner. I am currently coming to you from an undisclosed location, which is Hong Kong. It is 9:49 p.m. where I am. My brain tells me it is 8:45 a.m. Where I should be. So let's hope this all goes well. I am using iPhone headphones, which were not designed for recording a podcast, but we're going to see how that works. And if the hotel Wi-Fi holds up, we might have a podcast. The incredible thing is, the one time that I was maybe going to miss, everyone's available. And it dawned on me that if I didn't do the podcast, I may become more superfluous than already. So I'm here. You can't get rid of me. I'm staying, and that's the end of that. Vote for us in the FBAs, please. We love you if you do it. It's arsenalvisionpodcast.com/FBAS. For some reason, that all has to be lowercase. I didn't make the internet. I just obey its rules. I'm sorry. Here to talk about the game is Tim. You can find him on Twitter at Stilberto. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
Paul is on Twitter at Paz in my pants. Hello, Paz.
Woohoo!
And Clive's on Twitter at ClivePAFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
Clive, I promise I won't screw up whatever food or drink you're having right now by asking you the first question in this podcast. I realize that was very unsettling last time. I will revert.
I was traumatized, mate. Traumatized.
Yeah. So, Tim, I'll start with you. And a very simple question. Game of Thrones is coming back. I don't know if you follow the show.
But we're
just a day away from it coming back. And I'm wondering, so there's a character, Missandra, and she's like a black magic witch or whatever. Do you think that Arsenal's away form is an elaborate Game of Thrones tie-in to black magic, and that actually we could be fine away, but kind of like Aubameyang with the Black Panther mask and all that, it's a branding thing? Or do you think that there's actually a more football-related explanation? We were brilliant in this game. I mean, is it just the midfield? I mean, is it really just that basic and obvious?
It was a little bit of that, yeah. I mean, the spine of the team instantly looked a lot better with Koscielny, with Ramsey, with Torreira. And in Ramsey, we had that fourth attacker again. And I think what we're kind of seeing is that this is the way to go for the rest of the season, with the three at the back and then having Ramsey as one of your two central midfielders. That's a solid enough platform when you've got three centre-halves. So Koscielny, Ramsey and Torreira in your spine is instantly better than Mustafi, Elneny and Guendouzi. So that's pretty much a statement in the obvious. But also what it enabled us to do is we obviously had a plan to hassle and harry Napoli high up, which they really, really didn't cope with at all. And interestingly, in Ancelotti's post-match comments, he seemed to be expecting that. He said something about our plan was to play out from the back because we knew that Arsenal would press high up. But basically, what he was saying was they just did it badly.
Yeah, they did.
Which really played into our hands. And obviously, if you want to do a bit of a high-pressing game, then Ramsey and Torreira are pretty much the two best midfielders we have to do something like that for you. So there was a little bit of the fact that they're all just playing better, a little bit of the fact that they fitted the game plan. We look far better at the back with Koscielny compared to Mustafi, and Koscielny from inside the stadium, I can tell you he couldn't sprint. He didn't break into a run once. There was a time where he went forward for a corner and he could barely get back. So I don't think he was really fit. But
still, though, better than Mustafi.
Yeah. But with kind of three centre-halves and Torreira there and the space is all fairly closed up around him, we made sure he didn't have to do any running effectively. So we looked after him. We trusted him to defend with his brain, which he's comfortably good enough to do. So there is a bit of that. But yeah, there is also a bit of the fact that we were at home again. And this is, this went very similarly to the Chelsea and Manchester United games that we also won 2-0 at home. We were also completely in control of, even from a defensive aspect. I know Napoli had a couple of chances, but I didn't feel massively under threat in that second half. And the importance of not conceding a goal, I think, was massive. And one of the things that I do think Emery's teams are quite good at, I think they're bad at chasing games, but I think when they get ahead, generally speaking, they're quite good at closing them out. And I always had in the second half, I thought the second half's not going to go like the first half. We're not going to be all over them, murdering them, even though we could have had another couple of goals. I always thought it'd be a lot more calculated than that. But we've generally been quite good at closing games down once we're 1 or 2-0 up, and I think that's largely what we did this time as well. So I think it's a mixture of a big mixture of things happening there.
Yeah, the irony is you said Ancelotti, they wanted to play out from the back. They weren't able to do it, and ironically, they started to cause us trouble when they just hit it long. They hit the early long balls into the channels between the wingbacks and the wide center backs. And that was when they had their greatest joy. So, maybe they just had the wrong plan for how to get past us. But, Clive, I mean, I think that it just makes sense. If you're not great defending, in your final third, and you're in your defensive third, and if defending isn't your strong suit, defend in their half. And that's really what we did. And I think that, Torreira's return to the team obviously really helped us with our strategy. I think the way he is able to press, but also the way he is willing to take an extra touch to get around pressure or advance the ball into a better position for giving it to a teammate is something we don't have a lot of midfielders who do that. Xhaka certainly, that's not really part of his game, although we've seen a little bit of it. I mean, for you, in this analysis of what went right in this game, obviously everyone says it's just incredible that we can't play like this away from home. I think we can, but we maybe just choose not to, and personnel is a lot of it. But, Torreira and Ramsey, I thought, really stamped their authority all over this game. For you, do you think Torreira's return was the bigger catalyst?
I think it's one of many. I think Tim touched on a few others. We had 2 wing-backs for starters that looked like they were ready to play football. That's always a good thing because they were
Maitland-Niles was imperious. He was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's just little things. I went to his game as well, so you can see little things like, ball goes out for a throw-in. Maitland-Niles is jogging back in quickly, turning around, facing the right way, ready for the next ball. At Everton, that was also slow. And he was getting taken in charge of by the situation rather than managing the moment. So it was poor all over the pitch, just the movements on restarts. You can see this. There's a metric in rugby they measure, like when they measure how long it takes for a player to get off the floor. They can tell when they're getting tired. With Arsenal, you can watch how they're up for a game on restarts and throw-ins, how quickly they move the ball, how energetic they are. And you can see in this game, the effort and the energy was just massive. And there was 2 tone setters, right? And the tone setters were Ramsey and Torreira. And I think they have that psychologically. They share that. We want to set the tone for the team. Now, I love players like that who say, I'm ready to play today. And they go and set the tone, then others will follow. I thought Torreira and Ramsey, I never thought that was a mixture. But with the back 3, that could be the mixture. That really could be. And I'm a big Xhaka fan, but when you want to take a game and lift the energy levels, I think it was amazing how the difference. And I think Ozil followed suit. I think a big thing, it's not just Torreira's pressing, it's how he sneaks up on people. He ducks shoulders and he shows one side and comes the other side and steals it from behind. And everyone starts to move forward. Another thing is also, I think what we have to do, if we talk about an away game, we have to play with 2 forwards. We really do. We have to move the emphasis to where we are stronger.
Although, ironically, I'm not sure either one of them had a good game in this game.
Yeah, but what they do, they stand between players. So Ozil takes the middle, and what you do between 2 players, you can fix 4. You can have them on the sides between fullback and centre back, and they can fix them, which means they can't get to overload. It's only when they tired we had to go to plan B, which I'm sure you'll get to later in the game. But I like the fact, if we're looking for the wave formation, we must have 1 player in behind 2 strikers for an away game. It doesn't bother me if you go back 4 or back 3, but we must move the emphasis of our game forward and implant our game on others. And once we do that, I think we're going to have a much better result. But Torreira and Ramsey helped sustain that. And I was very impressed with their intention and their pressing and their energy until we decided to drop away into the second half.
Yeah, and I don't think it was just a decision to drop away, maybe some, but I do think our energy levels suffered. I mean, we are playing a lot of football right now, and some of these players are just back from little niggles and injuries, and the intensity of the press early was not going to be something they were going to be able to maintain, and I thought maybe Emery could have changed it even a little sooner. To your point, though, Clive, one thing that I think does happen when you play 2 up front with a back 3 is you force the central defense to collapse a little bit more centrally onto those strikers, and that's where the space the wingbacks can hurt you comes into play. And I thought that, Koscielny, if he had a little more composure on the day, could have had 5, 6, 7 assists, you name it. He was not at his best in the attacking third on this day. So, Paul, let's get into a couple specifics. And, I mean, the goal that Ramsey scores is a beautiful team goal, but it's got Maitland-Niles all over it. And I think he did a nice job with his stand-up tackling. He did a lot of good things in this game, but I was really impressed with some of the moves he had in the attacking third. And you contrast that against the way he played against Everton. And it is difficult to point to what was different, except maybe just the difference of a player who wants to be more front-footed. And the way we approached this game suited him better. I mean, do you have sort of an analysis of what was good about Maitland-Niles in this game and why it might have been so different from what happened against Everton?
Well, I have a thought on it. I mean, what we've seen in a couple of games, including this one, is him being comfortable coming in field. He's a guy who has grown up thinking he'd be a central midfielder, and we've seen him play good games from the centre, beating players, dribbling past. So in the middle third, attacking third, when we're going forward, Lacazette swings to the right, and in this case, Maitland-Niles makes the adjustment going into the centre forward spot on the pitch, and he's in the build-up. He's in that layoff to Ramsey, which is very aware. He's off balance, but he uses his body really well to set that up for him. And I think we've seen multiple times recently him looking for the opportunity to not just push forward, but to move infield while he does it. And that's a big part of why this comes off. I think the contrast to the Everton game, I might diverge a little bit in the overall view on Kolasinac and Maitland-Niles having such a poor game. I think a lot of it was we couldn't play out from the back. I kind of mentioned that the last time we talked about it. I mean, there were literally times where the three centre-backs were in a line, not working out who they would want to pass the ball to among themselves or forward. And in this game, I thought Koscielny's biggest contribution was his quick decision-making and passing. Some of his distribution was superb. Some of his long swing balls and just generally moving it forward. And, of course, you got two quick decision-makers with Torreira and Ramsey to play it out to. But all of that gave Maitland-Niles and Kolasinac a platform to get forward that they didn't have in the Everton game. I thought that was a very hard game for those two guys in particular, because the midfield wasn't distributing to them and wasn't handling the pressure, and the centre backs were that was the big flaw in that game. I mean, the Arscast as usual did a great job on the pod, and they
doesn't ring a bell.
Yeah, they highlighted one of the questioning Cech's distribution in this game as being awful. I actually thought he was actually pretty good.
I thought it was the worst game I've ever seen him have for Arsenal, and I'm not exaggerating. I thought he was terrible.
What?
I thought he was absolutely abominable, and I would never play him again. And I can get into that more in a minute, but I thought if I had one real worry from this game, he was dreadful.
Good. Yeah, no, I thought his distribution, considering, right? I'm not saying he's up Leno's standard, but I actually thought his distribution was actually quite passable and quite decent. He had a couple of moments he screwed things up. And yeah, there were a couple of other moments where I'm like, man, this guy's a bit rusty. But back to hopefully some more agreeable common ground. I thought Koscielny, let's see if we can salvage something here. Koscielny and Socrates as well, especially in the first half, got the ball forward, made some good choices and getting the ball forward to Clive's two attacking our two strikers, and we used Aubameyang and Lacazette to get in behind multiple times in the first half. Second half's a whole other story, and I think having Aubameyang in this game, but there's also, we've said it in a thousand different ways. Some days the bear will eat you, some days you'll eat the bear. I mean, Everton really came at us in the first half of the Everton game. What other game would they come at us?
That's a really good point. Yeah. If they came at us during another game, they'd probably be disqualified.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So like this Napoli away tie we're about to have, the bear will come for us in that game. It's going to be a much tougher game. And back to the Game of Thrones, I saw a funny tweet yesterday. Daenerys Targaryen is the Arsenal of TV series. She'll blow a 3-dragon lead. So it'll be interesting to see how that one goes.
Yeah, one of the dragons now plays for another team, which is fitting because that's going to be Aaron Ramsey, and he's one of our dragons right now. I have to correct myself for a second because obviously it's not one of the worst games Cech has had in an Arsenal shirt. That's ridiculous, but I do think he was poor.
Buy you some time, Elliot.
Yeah, no, I mean I was exaggerating because I just think that the defense of him comes. Look, I think Cech is a lovely, lovely guy, and I think he's actually been better for Arsenal than a lot of people think he has. On this day, he completed 4 passes short, and the rest of his passes, he was 9 of. I mean, it was something abominable. Let's take a look at it so I don't say it wrong. I think he was, so 9 of 24 on his long kicks and 4 of 4 short. I just think we missed the distribution Leno gives us, but he also seemed for a player who's so experienced, who could almost feel above the Europa League because he's won a Champions League. Not that we like to talk about that. He seemed very, very nervous to me. He punched a lot of things he could have held, I thought. He obviously had the one that he carried over the line, which wasn't great. So, that was a concern. But I just thought he looked tentative and nervous. And there was one moment where Socrates...
I never felt that at all, actually, Elliot.
There were a couple of situations he could have...
I thought he looked rusty.
He could have caught...
test on the game, because I watched the whole game a second time, as usual, with the idea that people have been criticizing Cech. He was okay. His distribution was okay. I mean, you can quote the stats at this, that, and the other.
Yes.
And across the season, I think that's true. But you look at the actual game, his distribution, for the most part, is pretty good. It just is.
Statistically, it was poor. But, putting that to one side, I think... there were definitely guys, I think we can, and I didn't mean to get on the Cech here right now. It only got brought up because Paul baited me into it, and he does love baiting me. But I think there were some situations where he punched that he had clear chances to catch. There was the one he touched over that was flying well over. He didn't have to touch it. There was the one that he carried over the end line when it was, I think it was a Napoli pass actually, that he went down to collect and he tried to slide it over his thigh and took it out for a corner, and we were under pressure. I don't know. I mean, maybe the reason...
He was a bit rusty. There's no two ways
you know what, Paul?
I
think the reason I'm exaggerating is I'm frustrated because I feel at this stage of a tournament, you have to play your best goalkeeper. I get nervous at the idea that we're just going to stick with Cech out of sentimentality or a sense of fairness when we're trying to win a competition. So,
this is what Arsenal do, though.
But why?
Stick with him.
But why?
They will play him.
Yeah, but why? All right, well, look, let's get on to something more relevant.
The other quick upside to it is he needs a few games. He's just had one. He's going to get another one next Thursday, I expect. So, it's true of all keepers. They need to play a little bit, and he hasn't played very much.
Yeah,
of course, that's going to be a problem when we get to the next. That's a point to your point. Once we get to the semis and the finals in the end of May.
Yeah.
So he really won't have played at that point.
On my notes that I wrote for this pod, at the end in parentheses, if there's time, touch on Cech performance. So this is good. I'm glad we did this, everybody. Tim, I want to say, we really have to talk about Ramsey one more time before we move on to the rest of the match. And I mean, I think he has been. You can make an argument for him as our best player this season if you're willing to give him the discount for the amount of time he actually hasn't played. And the unfortunate thing in the wake of good performances with Ramsey right now is that, first of all, it leads people to be rueful about him going and the decision to withdraw the contract from him, which who knows if he ever really would have signed it. But there's also the question of how he was used by Emery or not used by Emery in the period leading up to the Bate away loss. So, I mean, when you see Ramsey performances like this, I mean, he is playing football at a level that is really elite at this moment. And we've seen flashes of it before, but I think we're all sort of being hit with it now in terms of what an incredible talent he is and how rare his combination of skills from the midfield are. Do you think that because Emery didn't necessarily see him as a central midfielder early, he struggled to understand how to use him, and that, seeing him in central midfield has given Emery maybe a new appreciation of how he can use Ramsey and the players responding?
Yeah, I think it is a little bit of that. I think what's really interesting is actually Ramsey in this game, I think, surpassed his total of games from the last 2 seasons.
He's below minutes, though, just FYI. I mean, he's hundreds of minutes behind. I mean, I think he's 400 minutes or so behind last season. at this
Right.
stage.
I wouldn't mind betting that he might make that up.
He might now, yeah. He might well do, but a lot of that is injury related, obviously. But
Yeah. I mean, the first thing to say is that he's making this separation really difficult by being all like
So
reasonable and good and stuff. And actually, we've done this the wrong way round, haven't we? Because we tried to wean ourselves off of Ramsey at the beginning of the season, and now we're like super dependent on him. It's probably supposed to happen the other way around. But I think it's a really interesting debate as to whether this has been good management that has enabled Ramsey to have a strong finish to a season, which I don't think he often does finish seasons that strongly, usually because of injury or something like that, or whether it's all understandable because Emery was trying to get a sense of what he had, or whether, as many people would, I think, flip it the other way and say, we always knew Ramsey was a good central midfielder. Why is it taking you this long to work it out that actually if you put a back three and you have Ramsey at 8 and Ozil at 10, this is how we ended the season a couple of seasons ago when we won the FA Cup. So in one respect, we've kind of gone through this big transition, or you could argue we've gone through this big transition just to end up where we started. And actually that I hate to be like Captain Bringdown at this point, but I think this might create difficulties at the beginning of next season because Ramsey is becoming progressively... He's becoming progressively more important, and he's becoming an important part of what looks like our best and most balanced team. And, he's not going to be there anymore in August. So in August, we're going to have to come up with something else, probably with some new players. I mean, we probably would have had to have done that anyway, to be fair. And I can already see next season, the first half of next season, no matter whether it's actually true or not, every time we don't play well, it will be because we don't have Ramsey. Now, there may be some truth to that at times. There may be truth to it all the times, but it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. That will be the stated reason for every underperformance.
Who would have guessed?
Between August and January next year. But I think it's a really interesting debate as to whether, Emery's used him well or not, because I think there are really two ways of looking at it, and both of them have quite a lot of credence. Actually, and I think you could justifiably argue, and I would err on this side, that Ozil, for example, needed to be managed the way that he did because of stuff that was going on behind the scenes, and that at the moment there seems to be, tentative peace there.
A détente, you might say.
Yeah, and we'll see if that continues. But I'd give him his props on that. On Ramsey, I don't really know, and it's really weird because I'd been saying last summer I think we should sell him. I think as much as I've always really, really liked him, that just the time has come, and that time comes for every player really, and unless you're like Lionel Messi or Dennis Bergkamp's time didn't come at Arsenal. He was so good that we just juiced him for all we could get. But I think pretty much every player has a shelf life at a club, and I thought Ramsey's was up. And I have to admit, I'm looking at the last few weeks and thinking, man, I wish we had him next season, because I think he actually looks like an ideal Emery player, and he really solves that problem for us of, he's one of the biggest solutions to the problem of how do we get the fourth attacker into this team without exposing our car crash of a defence.
Totally agree. Yes.
And actually another kind of point is. It makes me wonder whether we should have seen more of Ramsey and Torreira as a partnership. And actually, I wouldn't have been that keen on that earlier in the season, because I've always thought that Ramsey needs a passer next to him in midfield so that he can do his off-the-ball stuff. He needs an Arteta or a Xhaka. But actually, when I watch him play like this, and I've always thought that he's a great all-round midfielder, and perhaps everyone, himself included, got too bogged down with being Lampard or Gerrard and trying to just be the goal-scoring midfielder, when actually he does everything well, and he always has. That is not a recent thing. And I kind of look at that and think, well, maybe he needs a passer next to him to score lots of goals, but actually to be a good midfielder, perhaps he doesn't. Perhaps having someone like Torreira, although Torreira progresses the ball quite well anyway, but perhaps that's what the goal scoring Ramsey needs. But this Aaron Ramsey, who does a bit of everything, who drops back to collect the ball, whose spacing is really good, and he really picks his moments now to run. It's not just I think maybe a couple of years ago he was just running into the area for every attack, whereas now he's picking those moments so well, and that's probably just because he's in his late 20s and he's coming to his prime and he's worked things out a bit. But yeah, it's becoming really difficult, isn't it? I feel like I'm doing this in reverse, because I've always really liked Ramsey, and then at the beginning of the season I was kind of ready to say goodbye.
You changed your mind.
Now he's sucked me right back in again.
I believe the exact quote is just when you thought you were out, right? They drag you back in.
Yeah, exactly.
And by the way, I mean, to your point about needing a ball player next to him, the one thing that I will say, Tim, is that I think when we play like this, where most of our possessions actually start from ball recoveries, and especially in advanced positions, you don't need passers in the team as much, right? Because you're playing more like Spurs or Liverpool from the last few seasons, where you're playing in transition more. And Ramsey is an exceptional transition player. And so, of course, this suits him, because a Torreira steps up and he wins the ball at the halfway line or even ahead of that, and he taps it forward to Ramsey, who can give it with one touch and then make that secondary run into the box. And that suits him. He's not having to make 5, 6, 7 passes in central midfield during the build-up, you know?
Do you know how I'd sum it up? Was that we probably, and myself included, always thought that he was a Wenger player, which was part of the reason I think I was ready to say goodbye, as it were. But I think we're discovering more and more that he's an Emery player.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. And before I turn it back over to you, Clive, Paul, do you have a quick add-on for that?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know all that went on between them, but the one thing you can say is Ramsey's had a lot of average seasons for Arsenal, a lot of them. You know, you'll have a game here or a game there that reminds you how great he can be. And you can't put all that on Ramsey, because one thing is he's pretty bloody consistent. So you got to give Emery a lot of props here for what will be arguably Ramsey's best season in terms of performance for the club in like recent living memory, beyond his glory season, which, if you analyze, was actually kind of a bit more of a mixed bag. He just had a really hot period during that season. I mean, he looks a superb player for us at the moment. He also looks like he's really happy. Everybody looks like they're really happy at the moment. So the idea that Ozil would take Emery would take some time, maybe make some mistakes, have to make some adjustments, I think that's reasonably reasonable. But, you know, Ramsey's having the season you would and wouldn't want him to have as he's heading off. Everything's clicking for him. So I think the manager gets a lot of props on that. And on the minutes versus number of games he's played, I mean, it's also a little bit of the factor of how Emery does this 60-30 or changes at half times. I mean, he's had a reasonable number of important performances for us, even when he isn't starting. I think that's a little bit of the Emery factor. I mean, maintains Ramsey's energy levels at this stage of the season, so it may all be good.
Yeah, and I don't want to be argumentative about it, but I think we have to at least be accurate in the way we portray this. I mean, he had 3 starts in 5 months. You know, I mean, I don't. You know, I'm not trying to say that managing Ramsey isn't a smart way to go. And certainly we know about his injury concerns. And you can say you're managing someone, you know, towards their injury concerns. And I fully recognize that. But he started 3 of Arsenal's previous 19 league fixtures before the Bate game. That's not just managing his minutes. I mean, 3 of 19 fixtures is...
Yeah, let me clarify a little bit. I'm not saying Emery got it all right.
And I'm not criticizing Emery. I'm just saying let's not pretend it was just a rotational minutes management thing. There was something more going on there, you know. And Paul,
there's lots going on there. And I'm not saying Emery got it all right, but if you take the season as a whole, it will be one of Ramsey's best seasons for the club under the 2 managers. So
yeah, and worth noting, by the way, I mean, we had a bad season last season, but Ramsey was voted player of the season. So it's not like he wasn't good last season. And I think, look, to me, it's very simple. I don't think there's any rocket science here. Sorry, rocket surgery. It's brain science. I apologize. Ramsey wasn't playing midfield for Emery. And when he wasn't playing midfield, Emery wasn't really sure how to use him. He didn't really fit that number 10 role that he tried to get him to play against City in the first game of the season. He didn't want to play him in any of the wide forward positions, and so he was playing Xhaka and Torreira. He was playing Guendouzi and Xhaka. Those were his midfields. And I think it's only been Emery's decision to try Ramsey in central midfield. He had only done it against Blackpool, but he does it right after the Bate loss, and it works. And his realization that he could use Ramsey as a central midfielder, I think, has been revelatory. So I think we can move off the midfield. Before we take a break, Clive, I want to touch on the strikers because I think this is really interesting. This game was an absolutely commanding performance, at least for the first 45 minutes and certainly parts of the second half. And we certainly could have had better than a 2-0. And one of the reasons we didn't is because it was a rare example of Lacazette and Aubameyang having off games at the same time in a way, or certainly in front of goal. And I'm wondering if you have any concern about the form of these two players right now in front of goal. Certainly Aubameyang not really striking the ball as cleanly as you might expect, taking a little bit of an extra touch than he did earlier in the season when he was in better form. I thought they kind of let us down a little in this game, and that's supposed to be, as you pointed out earlier in the pod, like the strength of the team. So is this just one of those things where, form is temporary and class is permanent and we're lucky to have them both? Or do you have any concern about the way they're both playing at the critical part of the season?
I have more of a concern about Lacazette. Mm-hmm. I'm watching his body language around the pitch, and it doesn't look as happy as it should do. I think he sulked for the Everton game after he got his knock, and when the substitute came up, it was like, you're coming off, mate. I could see that straight away. He didn't look great, but he still works hard, and he still has a presence. And this is why I felt for a long time these two players need each other, and if there's one that doesn't need the other, particularly away from home, I think Aubameyang is my favourite to play away from home. I just think he makes people step back. When Lacazette plays on his own, I think people step onto him, and I don't think we run beyond him very well. But when Aubameyang plays, people step back. This is a classic game. I knew Lacazette was coming off, and when he did, Napoli couldn't afford to overload because they knew they got Aubameyang was there. So sometimes, even when you don't play well, your attributes forces teams to react to you or react to your strengths, and they have to give you space. They have to respect you. And Arsenal, in the second half, went to their ball-carrying team and started to transition through the centre of the pitch. And we definitely left a goal on that pitch. We definitely did, which was a shame. I don't worry about those two. I still wish we had Danny Welbeck. That's the thing I think this club misses. I think this top four would be done already if we had Danny Welbeck in our squad, because we would have so many more occasions when we'd have two power forwards on the pitch at all times. I think it's cost us. I think it's made us feel we're negative. I think it's made us question our centre midfield a lot more than we maybe should do. And sometimes we question our systems, and I think a lot of it is because initially Welbeck, Lacazette or Aubameyang, they were almost always on the pitch. Two of them were. I think that's a big thing for us. And I think if we made a mistake this season, I think we should have done a little bit more to get that third forward. I don't know what we could have done, but I think we've missed a trick there. Yeah. We may have seen a fresher Aubameyang. We may have seen a fresher Lacazette. It's obviously carrying an ankle knock from the Kurt Zuma assault. And I think if we do miss out, I think that's the issue. And just a quick one on Ramsey. I know you were talking about it, and I think tactically, he's really improved this year. I think he's really only running forward when Arsenal have secure possession. I think what none of us know is a contractual issue, and I wonder if Arsenal were looking to sell him in January, which may explain some of the lack of the starts that he had and the half games that he played, which were very effective, by the way. But once they decided we're going to keep him, they started to use him. And to use him from the start and really rely on him a lot more. And I think none of us know what went on in the background. I'm sure we've all heard rumours and we want to believe them. And there've been contracts on the table for the last couple of years, but we don't want to. It depends on how much you love him. You believe the story that suits you. So for me, it's a business decision, and Arsenal have decided to move on. I think it's been ugly. It's been sloppy. We're all hoping we see no more of these situations going forward, and we see no more stupid 300 grand a week contracts, because it's not Arsenal Football Club. It's not something that any of us can be proud of. And maybe it's cost Ramsey maybe a year or two, but good luck to him. Good luck to his family. He's going to get well paid. And yes, he's playing really well for us, but please let's not think that he's not replaceable, because he definitely is.
Yeah, I mean, I think he is. I think the thing that's tough is there's just not a lot of central midfielders that add the goal threat he has. So, you may have to replace him with two players to some extent. Clive, let me stay with you for 1 second before we take a break, though. I mean, if I'm going to be critical of the strikers, it's only because I think they are of a very high caliber and they had chances in this game they didn't take. But I think a little of the blame maybe has to fall on Koscielny, and I think that he came in for some praise in this game that is certainly warranted in some respects, but the more I watch him, just carefully watch him, the more I think that maybe in terms of quality we can improve on him. There's not a lot of subtlety to this player, and if you're going to get into that many good positions, I think you probably have to start to pick out a better ball and be able to get your head up and look where you're passing and look at the pullbacks, and I thought he did that really well at times this season. This was a game where I felt he didn't really know what he wanted to do with the ball in the final third a lot. And so, I mean, did you find that he had a better game than maybe I'm seeing?
No, he was wasteful. He was the one that was getting in a lot on the outside, and he had opportunities. And I felt on a couple of occasions he had an extra touch we didn't need to. He's lacking a bit of clarity when he gets into the box. I think he's looking to be perfect. He's looking for the player rather than hitting areas. He had lots of opportunities, so your eye could go to it and you could find a point to blame. I felt there are occasions when he runs in, I think, why don't you just have a shot? Just have a shot and see what happens. Hit the back stick, goal kick, push it out, we get the rebound. He had a couple when he just took it too close to dead ball line and cut back to nothing. I also, in these situations, my son plays wing back, so I look at this a lot. When you get into these areas, what you want from your two strikers is two lines. You want two runs. And I felt Lacazette was marking himself in the box. I don't think he was showing. Ramsey was really good on arrival. Ramsey's got a real trick of smelling a goal. He can smell a goal. He can run to the perfect line to make sure that he gets it. And he could have had a couple himself. And I think he understands how to run into the box. I thought Lacazette was not very good in the box this game. I think that's the issue. And it's not just the passer, it's the runs. It's the bunching. It's the spacing in the box. And it's all of these things. And when it works, it looks so obvious. Why do we do that all the time? And then we question the player on the ball and question his quality, when really it's about your arrival, timing, making sure that the person who's crossing the ball can see your boots to make sure that he can get a clear lane. And I think Koscielny is just trying a little bit hard at the moment. But let's be honest, he was so terrible against Everton. Bay looked like a professional footballer. At least he looked like one in this game. And hopefully we need him a lot. He's got to play a lot of games, and they're very energetic games at wing-back, and none of us want to see him out the side at the moment, do we? So we've got to keep going.
No, especially because if he's out of the side, it means Monreal moves to wing-back, and if Monreal moves to wing-back, it means Mustafi plays centre-back, and God knows we don't want to see that.
Monreal was the way bigger issue, mate.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, it is tough in a way because I love Monreal. He's a player that I just have a real soft spot for, but you can see that he's probably on the downward side of his career right now, and he's struggling to keep up. And the second half of the game when they did hurt us, it was right in that space between Koscielny and Nacho Monreal. We do have to take a break. Paul, I do have to apologize. I feel like I've been particularly argumentative with your points today.
You have, yeah.
And it's certainly not intended, but I think if anything can bring the romance back to our relationship, it's a little sexy outfit, an ensemble, you might say.
I'm snapping them on right now. Okay,
great. And I would be willing to snap them off. I can't use my teeth because I have my retainer in right now, but that's okay. Anyway, now that awkwardness is out of the way, let's get to something really, really enjoyable. We're going to tell you about some lingerie. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we will talk more about what made this such a special performance and what we expect in the second leg. Stay with us. Okay, everyone, it's time to tell you about our friends at Enclosed Lingerie. You can find them online at The Enclosed, ENCLOSED.com. Enclosed Lingerie is a Lingerie of the Month club. That's right, just like a Beer of the Month club, only better, because it's a high-end luxury lingerie gift for you and your partner that's going to enhance the intimacy in your relationship. Right now, if you put in Arsenal at checkout, they're going to give you $35 off any gift from Enclosed Lingerie. So you're going to want to go to theenclosed.com and sign up now. What better way to celebrate the romance in your relationship than celebrating with a gift from The Enclosed? And the gifts keep coming every month. So while it can be difficult to remember to keep the romance, to keep the intimacy in your relationship, The Enclosed has your back. Every month you're going to get that high-end luxury lingerie gift, and it's going to remind you of the importance of romance in your relationship. So do it now. Go to theenclosed.com. There is a perfect fit guarantee, so you never have to worry about the fit. It's beautiful, high-end luxury lingerie. Just go to theenclosed.com and enter promo code ARSENAL for $35 off at checkout. Do it now. Okay, we're back. I do want to reiterate, I am currently in a place that I don't normally do the podcast, that is Hong Kong, which is presently 13 hours ahead of my normal time zone. And as a result, I'm a little bit loopy. Not to mention I'm using equipment that is not my normal equipment, she said. So yeah, lots of things going on here, but we appreciate you for sticking with us. I'm putting up with the late release of this podcast and all the other failings that I have personally that are by no means the responsibility of the rest of the people on this podcast. Tim, so, yeah, I mean, I thought that we played really, 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 really well. And obviously, based on how aggressive we were in trying to win the ball back high up the pitch, I thought we faded late. The thing that worries me a little bit is what happened when the press started to weaken. And when we stopped being as front-footed and they had just that extra yard of space, they hit a lot of long balls early, and we were cut open so easily from them. So, we do have a second leg to play, and we do have a lead to nurse. And I'm just wondering, I am a big believer that we need to be aggressive and stay on the front foot, because if we get a goal, I think we kill the tie. But the only thing that worried me was the ease with which they were willing to or able to open us up with the long ball. Is that something that you looked at in this game as a problem and something that we need to be mindful of in terms of our approach for the next leg?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, where I kind of sit in the upper tier, we could see it. And, we kept, as much as I said, I didn't feel hugely threatened by Napoli. They kept getting the runs wrong and were offside, but we kept saying they've only got to get that right once. Mm-hmm. And they actually did down the side when they created that absolutely gilt-edged chance. I guess that the kind of the reason to be maybe a little bit positive on that is that Napoli don't really play with that kind of target man in terms of like Mertens and Insigne, who wasn't really fit. I think he's been injured for a while and this was his first start. They both quite like to come short and link. But nevertheless, they were making the runs in behind in the second half. So that is absolutely something we've got to be wary of. I think the first 20 minutes, I mean, it's a statement in the obvious, isn't it? But the first 20 minutes of the second leg are absolutely crucial because there's a danger that if we allow them to set the pattern, that we're then going to try and sit back and defend 0-0. And then, the nerves come in about our away form and things like that. Whereas if we score a goal in the first 20 minutes, I think you're right. I think this tie is, it is a long, long way to being done if we score first. But, you've got to kind of counter that risk with not conceding first, because if we concede early, then it's going to be a very long night in Naples, particularly with that crowd behind them. So how we approach the second leg is just going to be absolutely crucial, particularly early on, because I think the longer the game goes on, the more they're going to press and try and score, depending on how things are panning out. And that's quite natural. So what we don't want, basically, we're quite likely to be defending for the last 20, 30 minutes anyway. So what we don't want is to be defending right from the beginning. And I think particularly, because we clearly do have a psychological issue away from home, I think, not going absolutely crazy, but just trying to play our game a little bit and not letting them dictate is hugely, hugely important for the second leg. But yeah, you're right. It is a worry because these leads, I think the clean sheet was hugely important.
Of course,
I think it's absolutely huge. But at the same time, these leads get wiped out quite quickly. If they score in the first 10 minutes, then it's a completely different game. But the real thing we've got going for us is we've really only got to score once. I think, provided we don't score when we're already 6-0 down or something. Even if we concede first and get it to 1-1, I think that would be such a psychological blow for them. And I think even given our away day travails, I think we can score a goal. And particularly because we're going to be playing a team who aren't going to, do a bit of what Everton did and be tight and try and box you in and try and defend things to some extent. They're going to have to go for it, which is going to give us some space. So I just think that first 20 minutes is enormously important and will tell you a lot. It kind of reminds me of the year we got to the Champions League final. We beat Juventus 2-0 at Highbury. I remember going to Turin for the second leg and I was a bag of nerves. And after 20 minutes, I could see that Juve they weren't going to do it. Their heads weren't really in it. And that wasn't because we were attacking them. They were shot. And I'm hoping the same happens to Napoli. I'm hoping the fact that they're on an island in second in Serie A. They're not chasing the league, but they've got no one chasing them down. They've got the Champions League next year. I'm really hoping that saps a little bit of their enthusiasm, but we'll see. We'll see a lot in that first. How they start the game and how we start it will, I think, tell you the story of the second leg. Yeah,
totally agree. Paul, your thoughts?
Yeah, so obviously a big piece of it is going to be personnel. And assuming Koscielny is fit, if he survives Watford as one of our two superior centre-backs, I guess I actually have a question for you, Elliot. Would you prefer to have a back three with Socrates in the middle, Koscielny to his left, and Mustafi to the right, or Koscielny in the middle with Socrates to his right and Monreal to his left, given your concerns? I mean, there was really only one side that were getting in behind in this game.
I think the latter, only because I think that, first of all, I mean, Clive has said this before and I never noticed it, but he's a much more astute observer of the game, that Socrates gets bored when he plays center back and he's not as good as the central center back. So you wind up getting a diminished Socrates in your former example. But I think that the other thing is, look, I don't think we will play as high up the pitch in the next game, just because I think Emery is by nature a little more cautious away, whether I like it or not. And whether I agree with the plan or not, I don't think they will have as much room to hit it long into in the second half. I think we'll play much more on the counterattack. I think we'll be defending a lot deeper. And if we're defending deeper, the funny thing is that's where I really worry about Mustafi, is defending deeper. So I'd probably go with the latter.
Okay.
Yeah. Clive, what about you? I mean, I think it's interesting because obviously, look, Emery got a pretty hard lesson, was taught a pretty hard lesson at the new camp a few seasons ago, carrying a 4-0 lead in and losing it with a lot of help from the referees, admittedly, and some bad luck. But I think surely an experience like that could be to our benefit in this second leg, because he may understand that a goal is worth its weight in gold in the second leg, and he will want to balance not being too conservative with trying to defend the lead, but certainly get a goal and kill the tie. So, do you think that there's a balance to be struck there that he might have more ability to find in light of some of the hardship he's experienced?
I think the approach is going to be quite easy to fall on. Actually,
I'd love to hear it then.
I don't think when we go away from home that we should always stick to the back three. And I've changed my mind on this. I think we
played a back four at Spurs, by the way. I mean, that was pretty good.
Yeah, I think what teams do when they have time, when they have more time at home, is they hit us down the sides, right? And I'm on Real in the second half. They were spinning in behind him. I think it's Callahan, I think his name is, and they were spinning in behind him, and there was no pressure on the ball because we dropped away physically, and it wasn't just his fault. And what he likes to do is he likes to go and do something. So he steps forward. He wants to go and get someone. So when he sees something in front of him, he goes and presses it. When he nicks it and moves it quickly, he looks great. When he gets popped and they're going behind him, he looks a little bit leggy running backwards. So people see that and think, oh, Monreal's he's on the edge physically. But the problem started much higher up. So when you go away from home, if I'm Napoli now, I'm going to focus on the second half and our second half successes for about 20 minutes they had, punching it down the sides into the corners. Just take them away. Just have a back four and make them come down the middle and play a 4-3-1-2. Have a 10 pushing in behind, two strikers split, making sure we've always got a threat on the break. They'll get nervous and we'll take them. I think we should do that a lot more away from home. I think funny enough, the back three at home really works because we can overload. But when we get broken on, we've got people there to deal with it. So we've always got that comfort three in position. But away from home, I don't think we have the same pressure. I don't think we have the same confidence. So don't give people parts of the pitch for free. Just don't do it. Right? Make sure you got your fullbacks in. Make sure you got 2 strikers. Make sure you're playing much more direct and quickly and passing forwards. And if we do that with a 2-goal lead and they know 1 goal means they've got to score 4, no chance. Right? So that's what we need to do a lot more away from home to impose our game on other people. And I think, so I would go back for, I don't care who's in it, to be honest, mate. I want just to not give the sides away.
Would you maybe then sacrifice Mesut Ozil for a Mkhitaryan, someone who will graft a little bit more off the ball, since you're planning on playing in transition anyway?
Yeah, I mean, for example, the Watford game, I've got no problems playing the back four. Come on, they've got Andre Gray and they've got Troy Deeney. What are they going to do? They're going to hit channels and run after it.
I don't know.
Yeah. They're going to smash into us, right? So don't give them something to run into. Take it away. Make them be good footballers technically, which they're not. Make them face their own goal. Make them don't let them get near your box. Just hold your size, hold your position, hold your line, and make them play in small spaces. Don't give them the sides, right? So, and I would play. Hopefully, I'd love to see Xhaka back in there, but I would play 3 I would play a diamond. I would play a diamond in midfield, and I'd make sure I had split strikers. What you're doing there is you're saying to a Ramsey, for example, I want you to go and just disrupt the game. I think Ramsey can do those 2 jobs equally as well. He can do the centre midfield job, and he can do the pushing 10 job, the disrupting job, and the tone setting job. And we can then have some good behind the ball midfielders behind him. I don't think it's a problem. I just think it's very important we work this out now, that we have this back 4 away from home and play the back 3 at home and be really progressive in those home games, but always knowing you've got the insurance on the break. So we need to develop that strategy, and I think that's the way I would approach the Watford game, and I would approach the Napoli game the same way.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it, too, is technical quality. Like, to me, I look at the Everton game, and we were just so sloppy, and the technical quality wasn't there. And against Napoli, we played so front-footed. We pressed so much. We won the ball back high up. You don't need as much technical quality when you're not trying to build right from the back to the front, when you're winning the ball back in the attacking half. And so, I think with the back 4, you do get an extra body in the in the middle of the pitch, someone else who can help retain possession when you get it. I think the one thing we don't want to be doing away from home is just gifting the ball back to the opposition and inviting them onto us. And I think with the back 3, when we're not playing in transition, we really struggle to hold possession. I mean, you notice that, right? Like we don't have the 60-65% possession numbers when we play with the back 3. It's just not a system designed for that. I think in the back 4, you can get guys who are willing to put their foot on the ball more and hold the ball and give you a little more control, which gives you a little more comfort. So I think there's a lot of reasons it can benefit us. Tim, a couple quick hits for you. So, gosh, a few things here. I mean, one of them is just, the Ozil game. I thought he was really, really good at parts of this game, like some of his scintillating best touches. And ironically, the one thing kind of missing from him in this game is the final ball. So, I mean, I think you look at that and you say on another day, he'll have that final ball. And if you're going to play on the counter against Napoli away, you want him in there. But would you sacrifice him for someone who will... And to be fair, I want to be clear. I thought he worked well off the ball in this game. I thought this was one of his better off-the-ball games in terms of contributing to the press and winning the ball back. But would you be willing to sacrifice...
He was pretty important in the first goal.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm not saying he was bad by any means. I thought, like I said, Paul, I thought he was really good. I just thought there were some moments in the match where his final ball was uncharacteristic of him, which is not to say he was bad at all. But I'm wondering, as you look forward, is he a player you might eye as being able to be sacrificed for a player like a Mkhitaryan or a Iwobi, who gives you a little more physicality and maybe a little more tracking back?
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? I thought this was the anti-Ozil game in terms of his pressing and his work.
Yeah, it was really good. It was really good. Yeah,
but yeah, he often missed that final pass, which you kind of expect the opposite game from Ozil, really. As to whether I think he's sacrificable, if that kind of makes sense. Mm-hmm. I'd probably still start him against Napoli. I think it comes down to, and again, it's interesting, isn't it, that Iwobi and Mkhitaryan came on together, because those two really do come as a pair.
Wasn't it the exact same substitution pattern we made? It was it the Ren game or something like that? It was the exact same.
It was, yeah.
And by the way, did you see the stat going around? We've only started Ozil, Ramsey, Aubameyang, and Lacazette in something like 5 games all
7
season.
times.
7, and we've won all 7. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think that's a huge coincidence, to be honest. Albeit, if you told me we were going like away to Man City, would I want that?
No.
Well, I don't know. Maybe.
Touche.
I don't know. Well, no, nothing else is going to work, is it? So
fair enough.
But yeah, I would probably play Ozil in the second leg and maybe have that kind of Iwobi Mkhitaryan pairing coming off the bench. I thought that was how things would go, and I quite like that because I just think it gives us a real injection of energy. Perhaps at a time when we were flagging as well, and Mkhitaryan comes on and creates 2 really good chances for us, and a time when Ozil's worked really hard and he was starting to tire. I just think I think Iwobi and Mkhitaryan make better impact subs than Ozil does, which is possibly where I am. Excuse me, with the whole thing at the moment. So I'd probably go with kind of Clive's setup of having Ozil behind the front 2. And then maybe 60, 65 minutes, we look to Iwobi and Mkhitaryan for the rest of the game, just to give us that little burst. And they're all, the thing is, they're all good counter-attack players in completely different ways. Ozil, because he's got the pass, and Mkhitaryan and Iwobi, because they've got the legs and they carry the ball. So I think it kind of gives you 2 different flavours of the same thing. So I think I'm quite relaxed about which way we go for the second leg, because I think either way, there will be something of a 60-30, 70-20 split going on again. But I think I wouldn't play Ozil at Watford. I'd go with Iwobi and Mkhitaryan there, because I think Watford, are quite a physical, fast team, and I'd prefer to see those 2 kind of going up and down. And I'd probably save Ozil for Naples and give Ozil kind of 65, 70 minutes in Italy.
Yeah, I guess. I probably lean that way too. The thing that gets really scary here is that we play Monday to Thursday. So, you really have to try to win both games, but you really have to be mindful of how much energy was expended, I think, in this in this first leg pressing. And so
I don't know if Clive saw this as well, but 4 players immediately went to the floor at the final whistle.
Yeah, well, and Koscielny had cramp, and it was... Yeah, I mean,
he only had cramp in both legs. He had a double seizure, and he's quite interesting. I was talking to Sev kickoff like during the game actually, and he said, "Do you think it's a problem with our fitness club while we've dropped off?" And I sort of said, "No, I think it's tactical. We've dropped in 20 yards. We're going to go on the transition. Here comes the ball carriers now." Then he started to look around the pitch. I'm sure you saw it, Tim. People were just dying on when there was free kicks. There was
they used up a lot of energy in that first
Yeah.
half, Clive.
Yeah,
Well, the first half was almost perfection. Let's be honest. It was perfection. You look at this thinking, oh my God, what is this team all about? Can you explain what happened at Everton versus what we're seeing now? I mean, I could not find one single player that wasn't a 9 out of 10. Just couldn't. It was just beautiful. Then we get to half time and we drop in, and I think it was tactical. But then you look later in the game and there are just dead bodies everywhere, right? It wasn't good. It wasn't good. And now you sort of look at it and you think, well, although we want to criticise the team selections, some of this is just, I wonder how injured some of those players really are, and what we're managing. And I just think we just got to take a breather here. We got a lot of games coming up. We just got to trust the guy that is doing the right thing by those players and what games we want to target.
Yeah, speaking of that then, I mean, Paul, I'm going to ask you this one because Tim and Clive were both in the stadium and I doubt they would have seen it there, and certainly I don't think they would have watched the game a second time because only a nutbag would do that. But since you've done that, right after the El Neni substitution, they cut to Ozil whispering something to Guendouzi, and it looked like he was sucking on lemons. And it was just a little moment, but it is interesting. I do wonder if Guendouzi is maybe going through a little bit of a learning process here. He's been out of the team quite a bit. He played in the Everton game, which was poor. He didn't play in this game, and El Neni came on ahead of him. I was surprised by that switch. Were you surprised by it, and do you think that maybe Guendouzi's going to have to be carefully watched now because he might be just a little annoyed with not being sort of the teacher's pet right now?
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly had problems. Wasn't it Lorient he played for?
Yeah.
He wasn't very good at being patient.
He had a reputation for it, yeah.
Yeah, and his attitude is he's a first-team player. So, But this is different. This isn't Lorient. He looks around and, maybe seeing El Neni get on ahead.
That's a bit Lorient, yeah.
Doesn't really float his boat. But I can't imagine him and Emery have run out of mutual capital. So I think that'll be fine. I think it's probably what you want from a young player like that. That's why he's always ready when he comes on. That's why he's never been a guy he doesn't have imposter syndrome. This guy actually thinks he should be there. I'd also say I didn't think he was that bad against Everton. I thought we were bad. I thought he did what he does. And so I think he'll be fine next time round. I don't think our midfield was particularly good, but I think he was just being him. So I think he'll be fine when he gets his next look at it. Yeah, I mean, I didn't hear any of the chatter and I wasn't on Twitter or anything, but I did see that moment and think there's something definitely going on there. There was also the bit early on in the match, I don't know if there's any opinions on what that was about, where Emery was trying to keep down his assistant's blood pressure levels, telling him to stay calm, keep it calm, and similarly with somebody on the pitch. I don't know if his assistant was getting at somebody on the pitch, but emotions run high. This is a key part of the season. I think it should be okay. I think they'll work it out. But there was definitely something going on with those all saying to Guendouzi, reel it in there, lad.
Yeah,
it's a long season. You're going to get used. So
well, and it's tough because I don't think Emery can play Ramsey against Watford because I don't think he can risk not having him for the second leg. The problem with that is I don't think we've ever played a midfield this season that had neither Ramsey nor Xhaka and looked remotely functional. And Xhaka sounds like he's not going to be available for Watford. So I think we're in a really tricky spot. I think Clive has to go, and I want to wrap up, but Clive, I just want to give you a moment. Do you have one moment?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, okay. Okay, good.
He'll still be with us in 25 minutes.
Just the 40 more minutes, and then we'll call it. Yeah. I hate to bring this up, but I think we should at least mention it. And again, given that I'm traveling, I have not been on Twitter that much. I watched the game on a stream and then had to turn it off immediately and get on with stuff. But I am aware of a story that Koulibaly was racially abused at the ground, and look, it can be one person among 61,000, and it gives everybody a bad name, and it creates an uproar, and it should. I mean, the good thing is it does create an uproar. Whereas it'd be worse if no one batted an eyelash at it. But I think as Arsenal fans, we kind of presume in some ways that that's not who we are. I mean, obviously we have a bit of a history with the Y word and Spurs and all that. But I mean, when you hear stories like that, is it sort of a sobering reminder that no one's above it, or do you write it off more as one idiot in a crowd of 60,000 doesn't define who we are?
I'm a bit. I have to be honest with you. I find it quite disappointing. This whole racial issue that's coming up this season. I think it's very much a world issue, societal issue. About many of us are, with our politics, are much more around separation, and it's really emboldening people to have those sort of separation type views. It's not encouraging an inclusive, diverse environment. This one, if I caught it rightly, is someone talking into a phone and then posting that message on, which
is incredible, by the way, to have that kind of brazen attitude.
Yeah, and then you think to yourself, well, did a player get abused vocally? Not. Do people have these views? Yes, they've always had these views. And what's happening now is that people are taking them views into public, either inside the ground by doing and saying things or shouting things, or by doing a conversation amongst a group of people. But these things have always happened. They've happened in pubs, they've happened in clubs, they've just been racist language. It's just common practice in some areas, and it's just a society issue. And I think it's good that people talk about it, but I generally find it like it's like going back to when I was younger and going to grounds and having to stand there when things were happening around me and feeling very embarrassed. I don't feel that at Arsenal anymore. It's a much different crowd. I don't feel that at all. And if these people are aligning themselves to our club, there'll be people out there that are going to disalign them very, very quickly, because that's not what this club is all about.
Yeah, and I have to say, I think that, look, online reaction in both directions can be exaggerated and not representative of what the majority of people think. But overwhelmingly, I think Arsenal fans have come together, as you would expect, to condemn that behavior. And, I think there are times in the past where, you might have heard people being called a grass for calling them out or pointing them out or, that sort of thing. There's none of that. I think everybody has expressed that they want that person banned, that it's reprehensible behavior. And, I think overall, the good thing with social media is it allows us to point a very bright spotlight at people that behave that way. The only downside of it is it can make it feel that it is more prevalent than maybe it is, only because, look, 30 years ago, we would not have known that happened. You know what I mean? We know that happened today because of the power of social media to bring that into that little screen that's in our hands, and make it feel very personal and very real. And that's a good thing because you feel the pain and embarrassment of it. So I think it's good to shine a light on it, and it's unfortunate we have to talk about it, but I think it's worth it. Let's just wrap up with some predictions here, and Clive, I'll stay with you since you're running. You have a prediction for the second leg?
Yeah, I think we'll nick it. It'll be a 1-1 draw. If we go with the back four, we're winning that. We win the tie. I think you can see the difference in focus between Everton in this game. The focus was 1,000% different, and I think Emery's got his eye on this. He really has, and I think our performances at home are really showing that. We'll be fine. Okay,
Paul, prediction?
I think we'll lose 2-1. I think it'll be a really
That's a very positive prediction. I will take that.
Yeah. I think it's going to be really interesting to Torreira and Ramsey must be super focused on playing that game in Italy for all the reasons we know, the narratives, blah, blah, blah. Which would be good for us. I mean, they're going to show up big time. It'll be interesting how that impacts on selections for Watford, which is a crucial game too. But Emery's going to be looking at two players who really want to be in that mix for Napoli.
Tim, let me ask you this before I get your prediction, just real quick. Let's say Xhaka can't play at Watford. Which of Ramsey and Torreira would you be more inclined to risk for Watford, or do you think maybe neither?
No, I definitely. Torreira's had pretty much a month off, so
you go Guendouzi Torreira.
Yeah. I play Torreira in pretty much every game now if he's kind of fit enough and up to it. As for my prediction, I too think it will be a 1-1 draw. I think we might score first, though.
Yeah, I mean, if we score first, then I think it becomes a very calm evening, which would be nice.
Yeah.
I'm going to go for 2-2. I see it being a very open game. They've got to come at us, and I think Emery will be a little more aggressive, and I could see there being goals in it either way. What would be funny is if it was 2-0 to Napoli before we got our 2. So let's hope that doesn't happen. I will be.
God bless you all.
Yeah, I fly back Tuesday, so we might be slightly delayed on the Watford pod, but we'll have it out Wednesday before Napoli, and then we'll get back to doing some previews and Patreon stuff and all that good stuff. So I hope you'll sign up for our Patreon in the promise that good content is headed your way, or don't, either way. I hope you will vote for us in the FBAs at arsenalvisionpodcast.com/FBAS, or just look up the FBA website and see how to do it, or vote for whomever you love, ideally us, but if not, you can vote for the other podcast that's nominated, and you can find them at arsenalvisionpodcast.com/FBAS. That's a joke. And anyway, Paul's on Twitter at PositiveMyPants. Thanks, Pos.
Woohoo!
Clive's on Twitter at ClivePAFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
Tim's on Twitter at Stilberto. Thanks, Tim.
My pleasure as always.
My pleasure, as always. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter at Yankee Gunner. Give us a 5-star review. We really appreciate you being patient with us. Thanks for putting up with all the bad things about me in this podcast, including my opinions. I assure you they will be worse next time. In any event, we love you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for waiting on us. And we will definitely talk to you after Arsenal 10, Watford 0.